thousands of people have taken to the streets of Myanmar's main city, Yangon, to protest against this week's military coup. They're calling for the release of the elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi and others detained by the army. In an interview with CBS, President Biden has said Donald Trump should no longer have access to intelligence briefings because of his erratic behaviour. Former presidents traditionally receive some briefings after they leave office. A nationwide road blockade in India by farmers protesting against new agricultural laws has ended. Police detained dozens of protesters. More than 50,000 security personnel were deployed around the capital, Delhi. Italy's anti-establishment Five Star movement said on Saturday that it will decide whether to join a government led by Prime Minister-designate Mario Draghi after he has drawn up clear policy proposals. Five Star is the largest party in the Italian parliament.
We start in Myanmar, where the military has blocked the internet as part of its efforts to stifle the spread of information following Monday's coup. The internet blackout comes as people in the country continue to take to the streets in protest of the military. More than 1,000 people gathered in Yangon on Saturday for the largest rally since the generals seized power. Telecommunications companies say the Transport and Communications Ministry ordered them to suspend internet service until 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. This has left people unable to access social media networks. Mobile phone connections have also been patchy. Meanwhile, the country's de facto leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, remains in custody. She faces charges of illegally importing 10 handheld radios and using them without permission. Her lawyer told NHK on Saturday that the authorities have not let him see her, claiming an investigation is ongoing.
In our country, we have the right to appoint a lawyer while detained. But there's no transparency right now, and my client and I have no idea what will happen. We need the international community to keep a close eye on what's going on here.
A local human rights organization says the military has arrested 140 politicians, government employees, and students so far. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has pressed China to join the international community in condemning the coup in Myanmar. The U.S. State Department said in a statement that Blinken made the remark on Friday during telephone talks with Yang Jiechi, who oversees China's diplomacy as a member of the Communist Party's political bureau. Yang reportedly reiterated China's position of not interfering in Myanmar's domestic affairs and stressed that the world should create an enabling external environment for the proper settlement of the issue. The statement said Blinken reaffirmed that Washington will work with its allies to hold Beijing accountable for trying to threaten regional stability in the Indo-Pacific. Blinken also stressed that the U.S. will continue to stand up for human rights and democratic values, including in Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and Tibet. The Chinese Foreign Ministry says Yang reiterated that Beijing will not tolerate any interference by external forces. U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday described China as the most serious competitor in his first major foreign policy speech. He vowed to take on challenges posed by China in areas such as security and human rights. The UK's medicines regulator says the latest data shows that the benefits of coronavirus vaccines outweigh the risks. Over 7 million people in the country had received at least one dose of vaccines developed by Pfizer or AstraZeneca by late January. The data includes nearly 23,000 reports of suspected side effects, such as flu-like symptoms, fatigue, and muscle pains. These reactions occurred shortly after vaccination and were usually resolved within a day or two. The regulator also recorded 114 cases of severe allergic reactions, including anaphylaxis. But the agency says this is a rare side effect seen in most other vaccines. Meanwhile, government officials in China have approved another domestically produced coronavirus vaccine. The pharmaceutical company Sinovac Biotech developed it. Authorities say they approved the vaccine for public use, but they say the firm must continue to conduct trials and report the results. An emergency use program has been enabling people in high-risk groups to get the shot since last July. This is the second coronavirus vaccine to get the green light in the country. Another Chinese firm, Sinopharm, developed the first one that received the okay. As of Wednesday, Beijing has reportedly administered more than 31 million vaccinations. Japan's tourism ministry says the number of visitors who arrived in the country by cruise ship plummeted last year due to the coronavirus. This comes as the pandemic continues to devastate the travel industry. The ministry says there were about 126,000 foreign visitors who came by cruise ship last year. That marks a 94% decline from the year before. Cruise ships typically provide a big boost to the tourism industry. They brought in over 2 million visitors for 3 consecutive years through 2019. But no international cruise ships have been able to call at Japanese ports since last March due to restrictions related to the pandemic.
Now, and the question of whether Americans will be receiving more stimulus checks anytime soon. President Biden says struggling American families simply cannot wait for lengthy bipartisan negotiations over his massive COVID-19 bill. He wants action now, he says. Also overnight, Biden made some news about whether his predecessor, Donald Trump, should continue to receive intelligence briefings. ABC's Alex Brochet is covering all of this from Washington. Alex, good morning to you.
Hey, Dan. And so Democrats are saying absolutely more COVID relief is on the way, and we're getting a clearer look on their timeline. And President Biden's latest comments about these intelligence briefings are happening just days ahead of the start of his predecessor's second impeachment trial. Overnight, President Biden taking aim at former President Trump days before his impeachment trial is set to begin. In an interview with CBS, Biden saying he doesn't think his predecessor should receive intelligence briefings because of, quote, erratic behavior.
What value is giving him an intelligence briefing? What impact does he have at all, other than the fact he might slip and say something?
This as the clock is ticking on Capitol Hill as Congress works to help millions of Americans amid a faltering economy and devastating pandemic.
So I'm going to act. I'm going to act fast.
President Biden calling for swift action on his nearly $2 trillion plan, with or without Republican support.
I'm going to help the American people who are hurting now.
At the core of the package, $160 billion for vaccinations and testing, and help for small businesses, as well as a $1,400 direct payment to many Americans. The House now pushing forward with Biden's plan after Senate approval. And the way the bill's framed, they don't need any GOP votes.
They're not interested in doing the hard work it takes to build consensus.
But the president making it clear the payment amount is non-negotiable.
They're going to be $1,400, period.
Friday's dismal jobs report only adding to the urgency. Nearly 18 million Americans are now claiming some form of unemployment, and more than 50 million people, including 1 in 4 children, are going hungry. For some, that next round of relief can't come soon enough. Months after getting COVID, Tony Bowens is still recovering and hasn't been able to work.
The hardest part has been trying to get by every day. And so you're looking, and now you're looking for work, and a lot of jobs are gone because places are closing.
With the House passing this budget resolution, the next steps begin. Congressional committees working to get a bill on the president's desk before those federal jobless benefits expire March 14th.
And as you pointed out, so many Americans still struggling, waiting for that aid. Alex Brochet for us. Thank you so much. The pandemic, cases, deaths, and hospital admissions are falling across the country, but the number of patients in ICUs remains high in several states. A study in Britain finds the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was 75% effective against that highly contagious UK variant. And so far, 8% of the U.S. population has received at least one dose of the vaccine, but many Americans, millions, are still struggling to get appointments. ABC's Trevor Ault joins us now from Yankee Stadium, home to a newly opened mass vaccination site. Trevor, good morning.
Well, good morning, Whit. And you know, with the Super Bowl tomorrow and the NFL season coming to an end, every NFL stadium will also become available to become a mega vaccination site, just like this one here at Yankee Stadium. Because while a number of coronavirus metrics are heading in the right direction, the need to vaccinate the American public is as dire as ever.
This morning, more positive signs the holiday coronavirus surge is dissipating.
Hospitalizations nationwide falling 30% the past 3 weeks, and cases nearly halved from their peak a month ago. But deaths remain high, and this week 22,500 Americans were reported dead from COVID. This weekend in Tampa, officials are urging people to stay safe for the Super Bowl. 7,500 vaccinated healthcare workers will be at the game there, but everyone will be masked and in pods with all contactless transactions.
We've hosted over 1 million fans this year at various stadiums, and we've learned a lot from that experience. We think all of those measures plus the open air environment will keep everyone safe.
This as the CDC reports mask mandates have shown to be associated with a decrease in coronavirus hospitalizations. And the vaccine rollout is slowly gaining steam. About 8% of the American population already receiving their first shot. In New York, Yankee Stadium opening as the latest mass vaccination site. Hall of Famer Mariano Rivera urging the Bronx community to take advantage.
Now it's time to support you and let you know that it's okay to be vaccinated. I'm online, okay? When my turn comes, I'm online to get it.
But with considerable demand and a limited supply, many are struggling to get their shot. New Jersey grandmother Lori Lawlin lives a mile from a vaccination megasite, but hasn't been able to get an appointment as the country closes in on the 1-year anniversary of the pandemic.
For younger people, a year is a year, but for those of us who are seniors, a year is a lot.
And overnight, the Supreme Court issued a new ruling on coronavirus restrictions. In a 6-3 vote, they're now preventing a ban on indoor church services in some California counties. The court ruled the state can place a cap on the number of people inside. They can even ban singing, but they cannot block those services altogether. Eva.
Trevor Alt for us. Thank you. Baruch, the director of Beth Israel's Center for Virology and Vaccine Research, who led design efforts for the vaccine alongside Johnson & Johnson. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, Doctor.
Thank you, Eva. Pleasure to be here.
Well, first, let's start with the question I think a lot of us are wondering. Do you anticipate that this emergency use authorization that Johnson & Johnson has now filed will be granted?
Well, as you know, J&J applied for emergency use authorization last week, and the FDA will independently review all the data and reach its own decision. But we are very happy with the data set. We think it's a very large and strong data set, so we are optimistic. If the FDA does grant emergency use authorization, then this will be the third vaccine to be rolled out in the United States.
Now, you were involved in the development of this vaccine. How confident are you in its ability to protect people from these new variants that we're seeing?
Well, that's an incredibly important question because over the last several months, we've seen the emergence of viral variants, some of which are more contagious than the original one, and some of which are actually resistant or partially resistant to antibodies. So we were very pleased in our study that showed that although there was a slight decrease in overall efficacy, the efficacy against severe COVID disease was 85%. And that was actually seen across the different geographic regions in the United States, in Latin America, and in South Africa. In Brazil, over 70% of the viruses were a circulating resistant variant. And in South Africa, over 95% of the viruses were a circulating resistant variant. So we can be very confident that this vaccine, even as a single shot vaccine, provides very strong protection against severe COVID disease. And there were no hospitalizations or deaths in the vaccine group after day 28.
When you say those numbers, a lot of people start to think about the numbers that the other vaccines have released and that the numbers you just gave are actually lower than some of those other vaccines. What do you say to those people who are concerned that this vaccine may not protect them as much as, say, Pfizer or Moderna?
Well, the pandemic today is a much more complex pandemic than it was several months ago. So trials conducted now are really a very different ballgame than trials conducted last fall. Last fall, there were really no concerns of these emerging variants that are more contagious or even resistant to antibodies. So our study was conducted during the peak global surge in multiple regions of the world. Our study was conducted in the setting of these variants that will likely reduce the efficacy of any of the vaccines.
Dr. Baruch, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We appreciate you.